You are watching the New American Media. We are back, continuing our conversation with lifelong Cleveland sports fan and NBA scout Zak Baris. You can follow him on Twitter at ZBaris. That's Z-B-A-R-I-S. Zach, we talked a little bit about the Browns and the NFL in general, talking about, if things play out miserably with the winless Cleveland Browns, could they get the number one pick? Who are some of the likely high picks in next year's draft, and the future of Brandon Weeden? And that obviously is taking us into college football, so I think we'll just pick it up right there from the college football ranks. What are you seeing across the league? Specifically, I want to get to the Buckeyes, but first, who are some of the players that are really impressing you so far, and who do you expect to see in about a month or two as it starts shaping up for the national championship race when it all shakes out?
I really like, so far you have to be, the biggest surprise of the season so far, it wouldn't even be a surprise, but I've been watching a lot of, it's been hard to watch the Big Ten this year other than Ohio State because the Big Ten is so bad. They're literally, I wouldn't be surprised if Ohio State runs the table and goes 12-0. Their schedule is just easy. I called that at the beginning of the year. I said I'd be surprised if they were worse than 11-1. I said that about 4 or 5 months ago on your show. I remember saying that. But looking at it so far, the players that have impressed the most, I think you have to go down to SEC country. Other than Geno Smith, you really have to go look at the SEC and some teams in the Pac-12. Those are the conferences where the players have, looked the best. Right now you have DeAnthony Thomas on Oregon, who's probably one of the most explosive players I have ever seen play the game.
Ever?
He is lightning fast, and he's fun to watch. Oregon, it's like playing a video game. It's literally like playing NCAA. And you're just sitting there and playing with the same player every time, doing end arounds, and just throwing fly routes to the fastest guy on the field. That's what it seems to be every time. It's almost like a video game watching Oregon play. And then you have traditional powerhouses like Alabama, where they just, where they have just tons of talent. They run 4 deep at the running back position. A.J. McCarron's look great. The offense looks good. Their offensive line is phenomenal. And their defense doesn't even look like it's taken a step back after losing 5 players in the first and second round in the NFL draft. So I think the SEC, though, so far has been by far the most dominant conference, but the Pac-12 has been really good, too.
So you think
you have to look. I think the SEC right now has teams. It has Alabama at 1. I believe LSU is number 3. You have Georgia at 4 or 5, and then you have South Carolina at 6.
That's pretty strong. Pretty strong for it's strong for a conference, and especially you're watching the Big Ten. I don't know if you would call it devolve, but there's not a lot of strength in the conference. Do you think Urban Meyer is going to eventually change the Big Ten, kind of the way he did for the MAC a little bit when he was at BG? The thing he did down in Florida, taking them to championships and getting speed. Do you think he could actually have an impact in changing how the entire landscape of the Big Ten looks?
I don't really know. I think what's going to happen is Andy Staples wrote a great article this morning, actually, on Sports Illustrated about Ohio State. He said the rest of the Big Ten, literally, I exactly quote him, is the rest of the Big Ten is screwed, is what he said. This is on Sports Illustrated this morning. He said the rest of the Big Ten does not stand a chance. He goes, what happened was Michigan was supposed to be good this year. It turns out they're just their old selves, basically, for the last few years. They're not a good football team. They're not bad, but they're not good. They don't look anything better than a 7 or 8 win team. They're not that good. Ohio State is actually a much better team than Michigan, it looks like. Braxton Miller's a much, much better quarterback than Denard Robinson. Urban Meyer went in there and brought a lot of speed in his first recruiting class. He's getting production out of some of the freshmen, guys like Noah Spence and some other players too, and and Urban loves to build on his offensive and defensive lines. That's where he's always the strongest. And he already did it at Ohio State. He run a ton of O-line depth and a ton of defensive line depth. And I think that's going to play out the biggest in Herb's future years. I have a feeling you're going to see Ohio State in multiple national title games in the next few years, just because, especially next year, you're going to see, I have a feeling, because Ohio State's schedule is not that difficult next year. Their toughest out-of-conference game is at Cal. I expect Braxton Miller to take a big leap next year, actually, his second year in Herb's offense. And especially the defense, with those young guys, I have a feeling they're going to be really good next year. And, Michigan, like I said, Michigan doesn't really have a quarterback next year. And their schedule just doesn't look that tough. And I still tend to think if they beat Nebraska this weekend, my guess is they're probably going to go 12-0 if they beat Nebraska this week.
I concur, Zach. I'm thinking the same thing, and this is with a very slimmed down offensive playbook. You're watching it. Half the plays are Braxton Miller pauses for a second and takes off, and he is one of those video game players that I've seen.
Well, they run a lot
year.
of QB choices. And a lot of it is a QB
Right.
choice. Basically, which allows him, it gives him the option to basically, either hand the ball off or take it himself. And that was the thing in Florida. It's not the most fun offense to watch. Nobody enjoyed watching Tim Tebow play in college. It was not a fun offense to watch, but it gets the job done. They sometimes score a lot of points, and it's hard to stop an offense like that, especially when you have such an athletic quarterback like Braxton.
And
It's not easy to stop him.
I've seen him breaking ankles over and over. The plays that he gets out of when he doesn't get tackled, I can't believe he found a move that got him through those situations. I have been very impressed with him as a running back. I guess I'll just have to call him as a ball carrier. I don't know. Quarterback doesn't really describe what Braxton's doing back there. He's a hell of a runner.
No, and it's also, and I mean, Urban Meyer's running backs too. Carlos Hyde, Briante Dunn, Rod Smith. He has these bruisers. I mean, these guys. I mean, look at all their size. Look at all their heights and weight. I mean, they're all huge. They're all well over 220 pounds, other than Jordan Hall. And they're all above 6 feet tall, other than Jordan Hall. And he has these guys in there, for a couple more years. Hyde's a sophomore. Rod Smith's a sophomore. Briante Dunn's a true freshman. You have a lot of talent for the future. And that's what you're looking at here. And, he's bringing this powerful offense that can go in there and dominate the likes of the Big Ten, not put up a ton of points right now because they're still young. And they're still learning the playbook. It's not the easiest offense to comprehend. And, they're still winning. I was surprised they were managed to come out of Michigan State with a win, but the defense, look good. Other than these stupid penalties that they're doing, these unsportsmanlike conducts and the roughing penalties, the personal foul penalties, the defense has looked really strong too, especially the defensive line.
You're right, they have, and I thought it was interesting. I had heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but every place that Urban Meyer has gone, he's kept the defensive coordinator on the roster. I found that to be pretty interesting, especially since Luke Fickell was the head coach last year, and they just kind of brought him back because there's something known as the Peter Principle. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's the concept that somebody will get promoted to their level of incompetence, and then they keep them there until they retire or they're fired, instead of bringing them back to where they were excellent before they got promoted to the thing they weren't good at. So they brought Luke Fickell back from head coach and said, all right, stay on defense, and it seems to be working pretty well.
I'm not a huge Fickell fan. I feel the defense could be better, but, I trust Herb.
Well, I went to Bowling Green and I watched him in action. That was the first time in a long time, maybe in a very long time, that the Bowling Green State University Falcons were ranked in the top 10. We had ESPN College Game Day come to town because Urban Meyer was there. He was able to take that miserable program, that college football program at the BGSU Falcons, and turn it around into a top 25 football team. I watched it with my own eyes. I saw it in Utah. I saw it in Florida. I don't expect anything less in Ohio, down at Ohio State with the Buckeyes. Let's move on over here for a second, Zach. We're probably not going to really touch on the baseball thing too much because I can speak for myself. When the Indians were playing, in first place throughout the first half of the season, just like last year, and then they completely fell apart in the second half. Other than my fantasy baseball action, I've kind of tuned out of baseball for a minute. I'm looking forward to the playoffs starting tonight, but I don't know that I really have too much to add to the baseball conversation right now. My brain's been really taken up with the NFL and college football, but I've noticed a lot of the NBA is starting to get back into gear. I'm hearing a bunch of quotes out there, whether it's Barkley about LeBron James and Michael Jordan, or whether it's Dwight Howard and Shaquille O'Neal, and it's just a reminder that NBA is right around the corner. Let's get us caught up on everything.
Celtics are playing right now. They're losing.
Celtics are on.
Yeah, they're playing in Istanbul right now, so they are losing right now by 8 points in Istanbul. But I mean, it's just it's great that the NBA is back. Especially with the NHL being locked out this year.
That's right.
And I was going to see if you want to do an NBA preview. If you wanted to, I could go over.
Yeah, absolutely.
My picks.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and take a break right here for just a moment. And we want to remind everybody that if you are not following Zak, you can do so on Twitter. You can find him at Baris. That's ZBARIS. And follow him over there on Twitter. And yeah, let's do that. Let's do a bit of an NBA preview, because you definitely garnered quite a few listens over the past year as you helped us break down the NBA draft and all of the drama and all the playoff action. And let's go ahead and do that, because we've had a few months to reconsider what the Cleveland Cavaliers have done. Can the Heat repeat? And all the other storylines going on in the NBA. So we'll be right back. My name's Brian Engelman. This is the Unhappy Hour here on thenewamericanmedia.com.
Follow thenewamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.